Hi, I'm Cyclone, and today I want to share my new and fully updated guide for my survival-based Aurabot. Now, before we get into passive building, going first in-game, this Aurabot uses two offensive auras and 10 defensive auras, ranging from having pretty much every defensive thing, purities, I guess it doesn't have purity of elements, but it has purity of fire, ice, lightning, vitality, precision, clarity, grace, defiance banner, determination, and discipline. And on top of that, I currently use rest and anger, but you can use any two offensive auras that your carry fancies. Now, this one is, like mentioned, very survival focused. I think that the carries can very easily get a lot of damage at this point in the game, or like at any point in the game, they can take a lot of damage. But the survivability part is a more annoying one. So I made an Aurabot that is heavily focused on said survivability, so that the carry then just can focus purely on getting his damage, and you giving all the survivability he will need. Because in later stages of this Aurabot, you can even take a Maven explosion. Like, this has crazy survivability. If we take a look at my defenses, you will say, okay, only 65k armor, only 71k evasion. Well, this is without Flask. If I activate my Flask, we're looking at 100k armor and evasion. And that is the minimal League Start version. Oh, not really minimal, but this is like a League Start version, and you can push that even higher. The survivability of this build are absurdly high. But I'm skipping ahead. Let's take a look at the Ascendency first. The Ascendency of this build, you want to have Necromancer and Guardian. Now that is the old combo, Necromancer for the attacking cast speed, Guardian for the physical damage reduction, as well as the reduced curse effect, the regeneration, the almost free onslaught, and the gaining endurance charges from your carry if he generates any. That is an overall nice Ascendancy. Now, what is new is that we also want Champion of the Cause. We can get that by using a Forbidden Flame and a Forbidden Flesh. By having these two on our tree, we gain the third Ascendancy, and we go for whatever is the cheapest on those, and then just allocate the other one. I think most of the time Guardian will be the cheapest, but who knows, maybe Next League Champion or Necromancer are cheaper. Regardless of that, you first go for Guardian Necromancer, and if you get the third one, respec this as needed. But that's the Ascendancy. The rest of the tree is fairly simple. We want a lot of aura effect, a lot of defenses, and then we want a bit of keystones and a bit of survivability. But let's start with the aura effect. We're going to use influence, aura effect and reservation, of course. Influence, leadership, reservation mastery with 15% mana reservation efficiency. We want to use charisma. For charisma, we also want to use an intuitive leap. Then we want to use reflexes so we get evasion mastery with grace. We want discipline on the energy mastery and vitality on the life mastery. And lastly, we want serenity to gain another mana reservation and aura effect. We take the full wheel. We can take the auras from your skill, have 15% increased effect on you on the reservation mastery. Now, if you use this, keep in mind that when you say I'm having 80% auras, your carry might only has 87. Because if you are just below the threshold uses, you are above the threshold, but the aura you're grinding is still below it. And lastly, we do want to anoint Champion of the Cause. That are the aura nodes. Now, you already seen a few of the other things. I'm a level 100, so some of the things I mention here or have on the tree I'm not mentioning are like last stage stuff. We're going to get our defenses by using a melding and an energy from within on it. We're getting it from insightfulness and foresight, which we travel over, as well as face and steel and sanctum of swords. Now, there are a few things that I want to note here. The first thing is there is intuitive leap. We want to use this so we have less travel nodes, saving 3 passive points. You could also argue that you want to use the new jewel that lets you allocate stuff around Supreme Ego. Now, this is okay, but because we take reflexes for the evasion mastery, we are already pretty close, and 3 spots for the jewel socket is what we usually use. Because if you use it on other, yes, we would save another passive point, but that is not worth it having the unavailability of the jewel socket for another jewel that we want to use. Hope that makes sense. The next thing that we want is the keystones. We also use CI and the LOTOs, that is the old combo for Aurabot for the good survivability, but we also use Divine Shield because you've seen the armor, 100k armor, we preventing up to 50k physical damage and we generating 3% of that. That is a lot of ES recovery we get from it. And the next thing that I want to take a look at is the militant phase. There's a specific militant phase. The way this works is if it drops, it has 2 things that it grants per devotion. Now those cannot be divined, so that will determine the price of that militant phase most of the time, assuming there is not any crazy combination of the name on the seed. But in our case, we want the effect of non-curse auras per 10 devotion. We can pretty easily get like 200 to 220 devotion, giving us 22 or 20 to 22 aura effect, which we do want. We want every source of aura effect that is reasonable to take. And to get that, we need the second really pricey thing on this build, at least on the League Start version, an Unnatural Instinct. Unnatural Instinct gives us 80 devotion and a whole lot of other stuff, but the 80 devotion is the main part. And I know it can be pricey at points, which is why you don't have to immediately take it, but if you want to go for the later stages of this, Unnatural Instinct Militant Phase is a really nice combo to get more aura effect. Now, the last thing that we want to take a look at is the voices. In this one, I am using voices with 5 passives. They shouldn't be too pricey at any point in the league, like maybe between 10 chaos and exalt at most if voices are super rare because nobody's running Simulacrum. If you cannot have voices, what you can use instead is a large shield cluster with 8 passives, strike leader, veteran defender. Alternatively, you can do the same just with Prodigious Defender and Veteran Defender. If you have either Prodigious Defender or Strike Leader, Veteran Defender will appear in the front spot, allowing you to take it. The reason we want Veteran Defender is early on it gives us 15% all attributes, 15% all res, which we will need until we have the high aura effect on the militant phase. And it also gives us like 150 energy shield from the 6% increased defense from equipped shield. The last thing we want on the tree are 5, and it's early on 6 small reservation clusters. Now 5 of these have to have the 25 increase effect, as you can see here. The last one doesn't need anything, we just want it with anything on it, so we can spec into 1 to 2 nodes to get the reservation efficiency we need until we get any of the later upgrades. So that is the tree. Next, let's take a look at the item section. Once we start with the initial gear, we want an Alpha Soul to get our purities and our discipline in and having the reservation efficiency. Also, we cannot be frozen. Then we want a Victorious Influence, so we get more aura effect from it, and it is a nice spot for our early offensive auras. We want the ES Gloves for a lot of energy shield. We want the ES Evasion Boot Syntrack. We want a Thermal Edge for even more energy shield. We want a Jinx Juju for more aura effect. This one will be replaced as soon as we can with an Ashes of the Stars, but I come to that in a moment. On our ring slots, we want to have Strength and Dexterity because we need those stats for the auras, as well as either energy shield or crafted ES. And lastly, we want a Baited Breath. Baited Breath has energy shield and intelligence and more ES, and it's really nice to have. And now I skipped a spot intentionally. This is what I want to talk about, which is new in this version of the Aurabot. Other Aurabot versions already used it for quite a bit. I recently was able to fit it in on top of the second offensive aura, which is now why I want to mention it last. This shield giving us another 20% non-curse aura effect, which is really huge. Also, if you have a good amount of if you have an okay amount of block, you can also get 5% regeneration of life, with the LOTOs getting to regeneration of energy shield, as well as a good amount of ES, and allows you to be able to use Animate Guardian pretty easily, which we come to in the gems section. So this shield is pretty good, and we do want to use it. Now, for the flasks, we have Sinner on every flask. We are going to use Jade, Granite, Quicksilver, Stibnite, Basalt. Now, when you get a Thrill Ripper, which you want to use so your Wall Discipline has a higher uptime, you first want to place the Stibnite Flask, and later when you get a Divergent Determination, you want to replace the Basalt with the Stibnite again. On the Flask, the mods you're looking for the suffixes is like on 1 armor, on 1 evasion, on 1 reduced curse effectiveness. With this, you should barely be affected by curses by 25 on the tree and 50 on the Flask. Then we want 1 with Ignite removal if you do bosses. If you're in a map, Ignite removal isn't that important, but if you do bosses, Ignite removal definitely becomes important. And it's the same as for Bleed removal. Now you could say you want to just have that always, or you could say you have blood immunity, you don't need to worry about normal bleed, but I learned that for bosses, bleed and ignite can be annoying, so you want to have that on a flask. Once we get to a bit higher invested in gear, there are a few changes. We want to replace the amulet Jinx Juju with an Ashes of the Star, and now also Anointed. The Ashes of the Star has pure upside. It has a reservation efficiency, which is what we want to focus on. Gives +1 to all our auras, as well as our other stuff, but we don't care so much about that as we care about the auras. And lastly, it also gives us quality to the skill gems. Now, at the beginning it's not that important, but once you get your hands on alternate quality gems, such as Divergent Determination for evasion as extra armor, or Anomalous Defiance banner for increased armor and evasion rating, that becomes a really absurd stat too, and you want to get this one with preferable 30 quality and 20 reservation efficiency. The other change that we do is we adding a Shaper's Touch in the mix. With the Shaper's Touch, it gives us a lot of defensive power, and it should also be fairly cheap to get it with either +2 AoE or +2 to auras. If you want to focus more on your offensive auras, what you can also do is getting later on Crusader's Gloves, the Hands of the High Templar, with +2 aura and +2 AoE for when you put your offensive auras into that, not in the Victorious Influence anymore. I just mentioned it here because then I have mentioned it. And that is about all the changes that we do from the tree. And with this League Start gear, like again, it should be 2030X, we're looking at 133k EHP. And that's definitely not the correct evasion and armor amount as you've seen in game. We have a bit more. But that is the initial gear. Now we can go even further beyond. We can get more upgrades. Now the reason why we want to upgrade our reservation efficiency is to upgrade our aura effect and our survivability. There are a few things we can get. We can get our hands on an enhance, so we could link it with an anomalous defiance banner and a divergent deformation. On top of that, we could use a rare weapon that has +2 to support gems, so we can get a total of 90 quality. Now 90 quality on a Defiance banner is giving you 45 increased armor and evasion rating. And if you use a 90 quality on a Divergent Determination, that gives you 9% of evasion rating as extra armor. This will be able to get you up to almost 200k armor and 200k evasion rating. If we take a look at my high investment passive building, you will see that I have 115k evasion and 140k armor and almost 500k EHP. That is the version of the Aurabot that can survive a Maven memory game explosion. It is very absurd. But we can go even crazier. We can use a Viv Insect and put our grades in this. The reason why we don't use our discipline is that we only get a tiny bit of ES, but if we use the grades in this, we get a whole lot, like 20-30k evasion from that. And all this evasion with enhance and the defiant anomalous defiance banner and divergent determination is giving us even more defenses. And the next thing to make it even more absurd, we can get a wall regalia. Now, this wall regalia is a bit annoying to make, but when you have it, it's very powerful. It has reservation efficiency and elevated aura effect. The way, as a quick guide to make this, you're going to take a Redeemer base, and you're going to spam the Essence of Loathing, preferable Deafening of course, on it till you hit aura effect on it. Once you have the aura effect, what you want to do is say suffix can be changed. I think it was Reforged Lightning. There's one prefix that has a tag that is only one of its influence type. When you have that, you're going to need to hit an Orb of Dominance, to get Aura Effect elevated. If it breaks, you might need to step ahead from the beginning, but if it doesn't, you now have elevated Aura Effect and Reservation. Now you just need to keep suffixes, reforge, defense until you have a good amount of ES, and you have a very absorbed body armor. And the final big upgrade that we want to do is getting a stabilizing scepter, or any scepter if your carry can't use a elemental equilibrium, with +1 to all spells, and auras grant 2% increased damage. Because this 2% increased damage, like the Necromancer Ascendency and the Guardian Ascendency, will give you, will increase with the aura effect. So that if you have 200% aura effect, that 2% damage is suddenly 4% damage. With that meaning you will have a whole lot more damage that your carry, or giving that to your carry. You yourself won't have the damage. And we can craft the +2 to support gems on this. Now, last tiny upgrade that we can do that has nothing to do with aura is the discipline has increased effect. And we can also increase our aura effect further by using Elegant Hubris or Glorious Vanity. Now, there are two spots that are really good for that. One is this basic jewel socket where you will transition on the top. If we take a look at the passive building, the tree would look something like this. You would pass on the top side and pick up for 6 points about 36 effect. Or you could also, this is what I found one on this spot. Now I know it's not working because I have the militant phase. That gives me here, here and here, spending 5 additional points after the jewel socket for 36 points because we are already using this spot anyway. Yeah, that are the big upgrade that you can do, but some of those will require you to get more reservation efficiency. And there are 3 ways that you can get this. Now, of course, you could just say, I get it on energy from within, intuitive leap in my clusters, but that could get pricey real quick. Now, what I did is I got it on the body armor, 10%. I can get it on an Alpha Soul. You don't really need an enchantment or any targeted reservation efficiency. Instead, you can use this Corrupt to get your Purities and your Discipline in there with reservation efficiency in it. And the last thing you can do is using 2 small clusters with 35% effect each. I have listed in the mid to high investment POB in the notes section what upgrades you need to, so what change upgrade you can do. For example, for getting a +2 Shaper's Touch or the +4 Hands of the High Templar, you will need the reservation efficiency on the body armor because in that regard you want to upgrade your body armor anyway, so that you don't need the Victorious anymore and you can use your offensives on the gloves. For getting the Enhance and the Women Sect in to increase your Determination and Defiance banner to Absurdity, you will need the Corrupted Alpha Soul, and so you can keep the Wakatuki or Matua. Without using the 6 wall cluster, so saving passive points, you will need 2 additional 35% effect clusters instead of 25. Now, in this POB, you will also find some other informations that I've listed there for various things. I won't go over them now because they aren't that needed. But lastly, the Animate Guardians that I've been skipping very heavily. I guess I've been skipping the whole skill gem Jackson. So let's start with Animate Guardian, I guess. The Animate Guardian has 2 different trees. Let's take a look at the low level tree first. So we have all the gears done. The Animate Guardian is what I call the 10C gear or 5C gear or whatever you want to call it. It's 5 uniques that have low cost but a high effect. 80% increased damage and 18% increased effect of curses on enemies. 15% increased damage. 2% that is really for the survivability, giving him regeneration. Midgenoid twice, giving him a lot of strength, so a lot of flat life. And Victorious Flight, giving him and us movement speed. Now that is a cheap Animate Guardian. The high Animate Guardian looks a bit different and has 2 versions. My recommended is currently version 2, however version 1 gives you more power, but it will die a little bit more often. The upgraded version we do it because we want a Kingmaker. For our gloves and boots in both versions we want chaos resistance and a mix of energy shield and life. For the body armor on this one you want a Doppelganger's Guise, giving him a lot of regeneration, and also he will always take the less physical damage and chaos damage because he will always be considered sane. And on the helmet we want a Crown of the Inward Eye for even more life and ES. which is the reason why we want ES on the gear. Now the other version uses a gap of the ephemeral. This will mean you can't be slowed and you also cannot be critted, which is really nice. But I think this one is more for non-bossing content and non-delirium content, more casual content. But then again, in casual content, you don't really need this. The reason why I don't recommend this for bossing and delirium is that the regeneration this one has is really good. When you add the Mask of the Stitch Demon on top, it's giving a good amount of regeneration, but it will not be enough to survive like 100, 200 enemies on the screen that keep hitting on it. It won't keep up with the regeneration, which is why I think version 2 is better. But yeah, that is about the skills. Now finally, let's get into the gem section. And for that, I will swap back to the League Start POB. We are going to start on our helmet, where we want Purity of Ice, Fire, Lightning, and Discipline. On our body armor, we want any 2 offensive auras and Smite, which is a free offensive aura, because it doesn't reserve anything. In our, pretty much anywhere where we have space, we fit Vitality, Clarity, Precision. We keep that at level 1 early, and when you have some spare mana, you can level up whatever you needed. Now, I know Vitality at level 20, buffing enough, can give a lot of regeneration. This version relies on Wall Discipline and the 20% life regeneration every few seconds, so it doesn't really need a high Vitality. Then we want, of course, Grace, Determination, Defiance banner. We want Leap Slam, fast attacks, or Flame Dash, Shield Charge, fast attacks. Now, I recently started using Leap Slam because of socket pressure, but before that used the Flame Dash and Shield Charge. Either works fine, use whatever you prefer, and if you have space, you can also add a cast when damage taken, Desecrate Bone Offering. Now, this will work because of the Necromancer Ascendency. You will get a bit of block, which again works well with the Wakatuki or Matua. And lastly, in the Wakatuki, you can also use an Animate Guardian with Meat Shield and Minion Life. I only recommend this once you have a Divergent Animate Guardian and an Ashes of the Star, so he has enough life to survive most of the stuff, and the regeneration is regenerating enough. On the high version, this doesn't really change a whole lot. If we take a look at the skill section here, we are using the Purities again, we are using the offensive auras again, just that we use Awakened Generosity now, and we use them in the gloves, again, either in the +2 or +4 gloves. We still use our flat auras, but here we can replace our Vitality with a Divergent for increased damage on full life, and Precision for increased damage on overall. We want to get Divergent and Armulus for Determination Defiance Band, as well as Enhanced level 4. Now with the new upgrade, we can get it to 5, giving us another 8 quality, which is nice to have, because that would mean we get from our 24 to 80, which should give us, wait, actually no, we're going even higher. I forgot, we already have the +2, so we're going for 6, we go to 7, so we have 48. So for Determination, it's not doing anything, but it should give you like 4 more increased armored evasion rating on Defiance banner if you want to push that high. But yeah, Enhance, super good on this. Okay. We want a Grace in the Women's Sect. We want our Wall Discipline that we purely use for Wall. We have a separate discipline because the Wall part doesn't gain a whole lot with the level up. We just have any level Wall Discipline that we have, so we have it up when we need it. We still have our cast when damage taken set up. We still have the Animate Guardian. We have our mobility, and we have a Molten Shell. Now, the Molten Shell is what I consider a panic button. We don't need the Wall version. The normal Molten Shell we have on left click, it insta-caps to 10k, but the Wall version is giving us a 10-second Wall soul gain prevention, and we do not want it most of the time. I have added it for like a panic button, but when you activate it, you will be a bit in danger because your discipline is going to take a long time before it's up again. But yeah, that's about everything I wanted to mention outside of the leveling section. In this version, as mentioned, you have the nodes, but in the Aurabot League Start version, I know I'm skipping a lot between nodes, I hope it's not too confusing. For the tree, we want to start taking Master Zapper. This will be 13 points, so at the end of Act 1, when you can use your Lightning Trap, you will be able to use Master Zapper. Then we want to take first life and kill 2 nodes, as well as trap mastery for recovering 30 life when a trap is triggered. This will give us the survivability needed early on, as well as taking the 4 projectile nodes to have enough damage once we have our lightning trap. Then we start going towards the top right side of the tree, where we get influence, as well then getting leadership, and at some point also getting the hired killer. The hired killer, I would say you get about level very early, like after you get the projectile nodes, you can at any point when you start missing a bit of life, you can go for hired killer. But I would at least go for it before you start the influence cluster. Now, if you cannot do wand recipe, you can take the dual wielding to the right side into mysticism to get some cast speed and mana regeneration, which will be nice, as well as a bit of spell damage. But if you do the wand recipe, this is not needed. Then after that, you start getting more Aurabot stuff. You will also pick up Charisma and will do your transition into Aurabot level 31. With that, you will want to get Written in Blood, as well as getting Melding, getting the Reservation of Mastery on Leadership, and you will respec the 4 points for the Zapper, and then you will use those to go to the left side, getting Foresightfulness and the Intelligence Transition nodes. Then, once you get another 4 respec points, you can use them here to get the triple resistances in Sentinel, getting you a boost to your resistances for the campaign. And moving over to Serenity, we're going to first go for the Reservation Efficiency, then grabbing Serenity, and that increased effect on you. Instead of taking the Aura effect for now, we will take that later. After that, we can take up Insightfulness with the Energy Mastery, as well as the Life Mastery. And then moving down to get the Reflexes, the Evasion Mastery. And with this, we're pretty much done with the campaign. Of course, Ascendency as usual, we first go for Necromancer, then we go for Guardian. And after that, we're really just going for getting the Jewel Sockets, getting the first cluster. We can use Devotion to get a boost in Aura effect early on, but later on we want to respec that again. And yeah, then we just really get into more clusters, getting more jewels, and then back on the version that we know and use in the earlier video. And yeah, that is the passive tree. On to the what skill gems to use. You have the leveling area and you have the priority list, what to take, when to take, or what I will do. Now, you start with getting a smite and leveling it in your offhand. Then you're going to use the what currently top leveling section, Stormblast Mine, Swift Assembly, Edit Lightning, Frostbomb, Orb of Storms with Onslaught, then Frostblink or Flame Dash with Arcane Surge. At level 12, you're going to deviate from the normal path most builds take. You're going to replace your Stormblast directly with Lightning Trap. This will now be the start where you will not fight the bosses, or at least not alone. Your carry will do the bosses and you're just going to focus on leveling. You're going to do Lightning Trap, Edit Lightning, and then multiple traps, or Swift Assembly if you cannot buy multiple traps yet because you don't have the Wisdom Scroll or whatever reason. And you will drop Storm of Blast Mines. And then you can use Clarity if you have mana issues, or Vitality if you do not. Just level it up to 5 and keep it there for now. In Act 2, you can get Elemental Focus and Controlled Destruction to your setups. You will drop the Frostbomb then for the Orb of Storms, and you can use Gitterbots and Herald of Thunder. I will also recommend on level 20 to get a rare Topaz Ring with a magic wand, as well as an Orb of Alteration, because this will give you enough damage that you don't need to spend another 4 points on the tree. In Act 3, I recommend to get 2 offensive auras or 1 offensive aura and grace and a generosity, as well getting a setting up a falling smite at level 31 with generosity and the offensive auras. Now 31 should be when you start doing the normal lab, so with that you will start becoming a full aura bot. If you have more reservation efficiency, which is quite common at this point, because if you don't need to spec into the points, you already have almost all the reservation nodes on the tree, you can use more defensive or offensive powers. You can already use a Purity of Elements, or you can use a Hatred, a Wrath, or whatever the offensive power you want. Just adjust it according to your carry, because sometimes, for example, if the carry uses Toxic Rain, you would want to use the Wither and the Malevolence, because there aren't really a lot of auras that apply to Malevolence. So with the Wither, you can help the carry during zones and during boss fights. And that is pretty much everything I wanted to cover. That was my Aurabot guide. I'm sorry that because of real life busyness, I'm not able to cover it fully in detail, or not really detail, but being more cinematic with this guide, showing the highlights of something, highlighting what I'm talking about. I hope this was good enough, and if you end up playing Aurabot, let me know in the comments. And if there are any issues, feel free to write those too. I will answer them as quickly as possible. And if I take too long for the comments, come join me on the Discord. I am more active there than I am on YouTube. That being said, have a great day and goodbye.